Kathy Mitchell is a wonderful woman here to tell her amazing journey. She's currently the Vice President and International Spokesperson for the National Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome and a noted speaker around the world on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and women and addictions. She's been a great friend to me for over 10 years, and so I'd like you to please welcome this remarkable woman, Kathy Mitchell.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Sister Suzette. And I whispered in her ear, I think it's been a few more years than 10. Time flies when you're having fun. I think one of the, I know it wasn't the first time I met you, one of the first Hope Taft meetings that we had. We had talked there, and I was wondering why they hadn't invited you to speak. Do you remember that? So I know we knew each other back then. To say that I am honored to be included today in this gathering is just a complete understatement, because my heart is so full, because I feel the love in this room, and I know the good work that the Double Arc has done for 25 years. I am with the National Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome. I'm their vice president and spokesperson, and I have been involved with NOFAS for now almost 28 years. We're celebrating our 28th year soon. And it has been an unbelievable experience to meet the people that work in this field. But the one that stands out above the rest is our dear Sister Suzette. And she knows I mean that. I am honored to call her my friend, and still shocked and surprised that she wants to call me hers. She's a little spitfire, as we know. We've traveled together. We've spent time in Vancouver several times. And, you know, she's always the one to put the dinner together. It's just the company she keeps is so surprising. Because, and you'll hear more about that later, because oftentimes I connect with birth mothers to children that have been born prenatally exposed to alcohol and other drugs. And so it's a wild group of us that go out for dinner. And one evening, Sister Suzette said, "Hey, can I join you for dinner?" And I said, "Well, yes, sister, but I'm going out with birth mothers." "Fantastic, love to go." And they got such a thrill to get to hang out with a holy nun. Well, anyway, as I said, you know, one of the things I have come to know is to expect a miracle in this life. And I have witnessed many, and one of the miracles is in my own life, in my own story. Sister Mary, hello, so good to see you. I have to give a special shout out to that angel. And I have to tell you, because I love these people so very much, and I love the work that they do, because every dollar you give them, I can guarantee you they are going to squeeze it and do so much with that. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But, you know, I have to tell you that I feel very nervous and scared, and I speak in front of huge groups to big audiences, you know, but I'm nervous and scared because I want to do a really good job, because the work that they do is so important, and who they are as human beings and the mission that they carry is so holy and so God-driven that it's a beautiful thing. And I can't think of any any charity that I would rather support than this one. So anyway, I guess they asked me here to tell you a story, and I am going to tell you a story that may surprise you, maybe not, but we'll start with the story. So we can switch the slide to the first story, and I want to introduce you to the loves of my life, my 3 little children, here in 1977. And my story is that I'm from Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., and I was raised in a Catholic household and went to Catholic schools, and I was named after my Aunt Kathleen, who was a sister of Notre Dame. And my mother was a very holy, religious person, and my father suffered with a terrible disease called alcoholism. And there were 7 kids in my family, and I was number 5. And I tell you this because it is part of the story of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, okay? It goes hand in hand. And all of us were impacted by my father's drinking. And I will tell you that I don't say that to disrespect my father. I believe this is a medical disorder, and people don't choose to have it, but it does make behaviors change. And all 7 of us children were impacted in a variety of ways. We had the blessing to watch my father have a recovery. He went to Alcoholics Anonymous after suffering a heart attack and lived the last 20 years of his life as a wonderful human being. That wasn't the man we grew up with. We grew up with the man we were terrified of. And I tell you this because we need to understand the big picture of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. At the national organization, we focus more on prevention. At Double Arc, they focus more on treatment and diagnosis and helping families. So we're all kind of hitting it at different ends. But we focus on prevention, and we do that through education. And part of the education is understanding alcoholism. Well, as a teenager, I was a lost child, and I started using drugs very early on, and the first drug I used was cigarettes. And so at 12 years of age, I was smoking my dad's Pall Mall non-filter cigarettes. Now that should have given us a clue that this is someone who's going to hit it hard. She is hardcore. And then I started drinking. And I would drink little bits from my parents' bar and drink booze out of a mayonnaise jar. And when I drank, what happened for me was it gave me the courage to feel like I was somebody, because I truly felt lost and like I didn't matter. And I felt like if I disappeared, my parents wouldn't even miss me. And soon after that, I would have alcoholic blackouts in junior high school and forget what I had done over the weekends. And drugs were happening then. It was the Woodstock era, it was the late 60s, it was drug, sex, rock and roll. And when I would be drunk under the influence of alcohol, people would introduce, oh, try some LSD, we're gonna go see Jimi Hendrix in Baltimore tonight. Take some yellow sunshine, and oh, okay, we take that. And so I was introduced to a whole array of drugs very early in my life. And by the time I was in 10th grade, I was sexually active, and I was absolutely in the throes of alcoholism. And I ended up pregnant. And when I ended up pregnant, it brought great shame to my very religious Catholic mother. And the father of the baby was also a Catholic from a large family. And basically, we were married within 2 weeks, moved out, but we thought it was fantastic. It was like, wow, we should have thought of this a long time ago. But what I did when I got pregnant with my son is I stopped drinking. No, I didn't stop drinking. I stopped using drugs, and I continued to drink, and not having any understanding at all that alcohol could damage my unborn baby. And the irony to my whole story, really to my whole life, is that I never had clear-cut goals like probably most of you, maybe like Sister Suzette and many of you in here. You know, when I got pregnant young, my goal was pretty simple. I just wanted to be a really good mother. And I drank, and my son was born with a clubbed foot. Of course, back in those days, the literature hadn't even come out about FASD yet. My sister I had a baby boy named Sean, who was born a month before Danny, and he had a clubbed foot, and she also drank. And the doctor that treated our boys said, well, you girls have to have some Indian blood. This is an Indian-related birth defect. And I remember saying, well, our great-grandmother supposedly was Indian. He said, well, that's what it is. Now, of course, what he was telling us, that was an alcohol-related birth defect. My son, his birthday is today. He's 46. He still struggles with that foot, you know. I went on to have 2 more children in that marriage. I had a little girl named Carly and a little girl named Erin. Can you tell we're Irish? And you know, what happened for them was that my children were dragged through a disease, my disease of alcoholism. I drank with both of those pregnancies, having no clue you shouldn't drink. My father owned restaurants and bars. My maiden name is Taverner, the tavern owner. That kind of gives you a clue into my family lineage as well. But I drank, and you saw the logo on the first slide of NOFAS. Carly drew that when she was 22. She's now 44. And Carly's pictures still look like that, okay? So developmentally, she's 6 years old. So Carly has full-blown fetal alcohol syndrome, and that just means that she meets the 3 criteria for FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome. Erin was also exposed to alcohol, and neither Danny nor Erin have a diagnosis of an FASD. However, I will tell you that I believe that all of my children were affected from being prenatally exposed to alcohol. Carly just moved out of our house into a group home a few months ago. She lived with us for 44 years. She is a remarkable human being and the love of my life. She is a wonderful, wonderful person that I know God loves a lot more than he loves me, that's for sure. She is pure of heart, 100%. And when my mother took her to her first confession, Carly came home and asked me, Mommy, what sins have I done? And I looked at her and I said, none. And she said, I told the priest that I get angry sometimes. And I told her, that's part of being a person, Carly. Everyone gets angry. You have never sinned. I have never seen my daughter sin. She's pure of heart, and I believe that. That's my little Carly. She was not diagnosed until she was 16 years of age. But let me back up and tell you now here she's misdiagnosed at age 10. Carly would not have a diagnosis of FAS had I not figured it out. So the story didn't stop with 3 children being prenatally exposed to alcohol. The story went on. I left my husband because of his drug addiction. I went on and remarried another man who was very sick with addiction, and there was a lot of turmoil and craziness. I got very sick, and became a mother that I am very sad to even remember some of the things that happened to my children. That little boy whose birthday is today raised those children right there because I was incapable of doing that. I would forget to feed my children. I would spend our money, our food stamps at the time, on drugs. That's the kind of person I was because that's what addiction did to me. I went on, married that man. I had 2 other children. I was then on methadone to try to control my heroin addiction. And I thank the dear Lord every day that I'm not a person that is on methadone today. Well, I jump into this since I just jumped there, but I have 33 years of recovery from alcohol and all other drugs. That is through divine intervention. I went on to have 2 children in the second marriage. And my 4th baby was a little boy, and he was born, and I didn't have any insurance, and I was considered an indigent woman. I was homeless a lot of the time. My kids actually did sleep in brown Impala. But anyway, had a little boy who died at birth, and I got pregnant about a year later. And you know, when I got pregnant, I knew. I went to Georgetown Hospital, and I asked the doctor there, "Can I have a healthy baby? I'm scared to death." And this doctor took me on for free, and I knew in my heart of hearts that she was going to change our life, and I was determined to have this baby and to be a good mother and to change, and all I wanted to do was get off of the methadone. And the crazy part about addiction is I didn't even add alcohol into the equation. I didn't think alcohol was a problem. I was so focused on the drugs. My baby was born. I left my husband. I got a terrible little apartment through HOC, had my kids, got them into school. And when my daughter was almost 3 months of age, she was born 8.5 pounds, scored a 10 on her APGAR. You know, life started to get better. She brought joy. It was like bringing joy into a very dark room. And I came in one day with Aaron was 5 then, with my 5-year-old, and she was very still. And I picked up my daughter, and she was not breathing. And she had passed away, and they said she died of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. But you know, today, the miracle is I get all of this. I work with the researchers. Alcohol is a leading cause of fetal and infant death, including SIDS. My alcohol use, my untreated addiction, I believe, killed 2 of my children. My children died because they were exposed to substances. That's what killed my kids. That's where the diagnosis helps. If my daughter had been diagnosed, you know, I would have understood. Maybe somebody would have gotten me treatment. I got treatment because the miracle happened. My father had a heart attack. And, you know, in closing, what I want to say, you know, we have a saying in the rooms of recovery to expect a miracle. We have a saying that God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. God is so good that he took this horrific story and kind of worked magic and prayers, and I know my mother had so many people praying. And look, today I teach medical students. I mean, I was an adjunct professor at Georgetown. That should not be. I have a master's degree. I have a quality life with an outstanding husband who loves me and my kids. You know, I'm on the world stage. The World Health Organization invited me to participate in a 12-person panel to develop guidelines on how to treat pregnant substance abusing women. So again, the miracles are happening every day, and because of the good work of the double arc, diagnosing, getting in, helping families, what a miracle. And the true miracle, the next slide please, is the fact that I have grandchildren that are much older than this now, but I have grandchildren that haven't been exposed to one drop of alcohol, not one drop. God bless you for what you do. Keep up the good work. And I love you all, I do.